welcome, and I'll ask Councillor Mackenzie to open with karakia.
Thank you, Chair. Tuia ki ronga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki roto, tuia ki waho, tuia tātou te tangata, kei te kaupapa o te hui nei, kei te kaupapa o te rangi nei, muri ora ki a tātou katoa. Bind above, bind below, bind within, bind beyond, bind us the people to the purpose of our meeting, to the purpose of this day, breathe life into all of us. Thank you.
Welcome everybody, and first of all I'd like to acknowledge we've got board member Dixon and board member Armstrong in the room with us today, and I invited them to sit at the table. We've got two councillors I see on Zoom, Councillor Hill and Councillor Greening. We've also got some staff on Zoom. The news media should be on Zoom, I think, so just remember that. So when you're speaking today, if you could use your microphones. We've got nobody registered for public forum this morning, and I've got yeah. Mark, you got your hand up. Have you got a question before I go to apologies?
Just a quick question. Given we've only got one sole decision on the agenda, I just wonder whether we should bring that as the first item.
No, I'm not going to change the agenda at this stage. We'll just go through. Won't take too long. It shouldn't be a long meeting. I've got two apologies at this time. One from Councillor Maher for lateness and one from the Mayor for lateness. Is there any other apologies? Someone like to move that those apologies be received? Councillor Dakey, and seconded Councillor Butler. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. As I said, we've got no public forum, so we'll go next to declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest for today or changes? None. So we'll move on to confirmation of minutes from the strategy and policy meeting of the 7th of March this year. Moved Councillor Dakey, seconded Councillor Mackenzie. Any comments? No. I'll put those. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. We're trucking along. Right, first of all, I've got the Chair's report. I just need to add that my involvement in outside the district in an access issue was in my private capacity, where I was a witness and did a submission, and we were unsuccessful at this stage. But other than that, I'll take it as read. Any questions, or would someone like to move my report if there's no questions? Moved Councillor Mackenzie, seconded Councillor Ellis. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. And you'll be pleased to note that concrete has been moved and that rubbish. It just took a bit of time. Oh, yep. So Jeremy and Barry, I think Jeremy, you're leading it, but Barry might be your wingman to help you if there's anything difficult. Okay. There's been a bit of email chatter on this, so we'll let Jeremy and Barry start, and then I know that I've got somebody who's happy to move it and second it.
Good, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll take my report as read. I do have an amendment to the second resolution based on some of the discussion that you mentioned, and I can give the wording now or after questions. But essentially, I'd just like to seek that the Richmond Spatial Plan, which is also known as Richmond on the Rise work, be adopted, and that would be subject to final amendments and clarifications as agreed with the Richmond ward councillors. So a few improvements have been, sorry, shall I
We've got
wording now.
strategy and policy. Yeah, we got slightly different.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay. Actually, I hadn't seen that and highlighting there. Yes, yep, that's fine. Good on. Thank you. Comfortable with that. Yes.
So this was a report done by Bob Miskel, not by us. And we had a workshop out of sequence, really, which created.
Yes, we did. Yeah, no, I can give a little bit of context around that. So, yeah, just as a quick recap, it's been a 18-month, 2-year project that's to sort of sit in between the future development strategy at the really high level and the plan change 81, which we talked about last week, I think it was. So, yeah, the Richmond Spatial Plan has been a project with Boffa School being engaged as a consultant, working with staff. So myself and my team and Barry worked quite intensively on it as well, to work with the community to come up with some of the sort of key moves and direction for development of Richmond. And as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, that we are moving ahead quite swiftly with trying to implement some of the really key aspects of that, and the most pressing aspect of the plan change to implement the intensification of housing elements. And we talked about that as part of the Plan Change 81 workshop last week. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. So questions, Councillor Mackenzie.
Yes, thank you very much through the chair. In the technical document, there's quite a detailed action plan. And I'm just wondering, how will that action plan be monitored and reported against, and to who?
Barry or Jeremy?
I don't think that has been, well, there's been discussions around that, but I would have to come back to you on the actual details of that. It's really, I guess, the next step is to work out how, because you're quite right, there's a wide range of actions and they are relevant to various different parts of council's operations. So how we exactly work out the structure of taking those forward, I'm not sure yet. So I could come back to you with maybe it's almost like an action plan for how that action plan will be delivered. And I think that's discussion with the management of those different sections of council.
The second part of the question, it'll come in here in terms of reporting. That would be my suggestion.
All right, well, if we could just make sure, I mean, that gets locked in. Otherwise, it's sort of, you always run the risk of it actually being a document on a shelf somewhere.
Correct.
And so if it's important to have an action plan, then you need to systematise the reporting back to whom. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and I thank Councillor Dakey for the work that he did in particular and raised some issues that we discussed with staff over the last couple of days. So I wouldn't say it's Boffa Miskel's best work because there's a couple of errors in it, but the workshop last week showed that there's some extra work to be done and some changes. Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. Just checking the edit to say that what edits is approved by Richmond Ward councillors. How do you go about that? Is that a majority of 3 of the 4 or something when you have how do you work that out? I'd assume it's that simple.
The motion is actually I have to approve the changes as chair of strategy and policy with the manager. That's the motion we worked out before. Didn't communicate it to Jeremy in the last 5 minutes. So that's the motion. And I've discussed that with 2 of the Richmond Ward councillors, but I hadn't discussed it with Mark.
Oh, I see. I misunderstood. I didn't quite hear that, and I've only just now had the screen share of what's on your screens there. It just sounded like, anyway, that's good. Thanks.
So the motion's up on the board. Are there any other questions? Councillor Dakey.
Yeah, thank you. Happy with the amendment there and the word changes, and positive document that leads on to real changes that will start to provide for affordable housing in our district, which are greatly needed. So this is one step in the process, and I thank staff for the consultation with the community and the business community on this document. Been a lot of work into this, and it's going to be a good change. So I'm happy to move the recommendations as they sit.
Thank you. Just while I'm here, do I have a seconder? Councillor Ellis, and I've got a question, Councillor Greenie.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I haven't been privy to your earlier conversations. But I do want to note that the medium density area indicated in the spatial plan on page 23, reflecting the discussions that we've had at workshops, and also, I suppose, responding to the consultation feedback, which has asked for greater intensification. Will you be contemplating, Chair, in that third motion, changes to the medium density 1 areas?
We'll have to have a discussion with staff about that before we make that area. But the key point will actually be what comes out in the plan change, because that's where the actual issues. What's in the plan change, and that will be publicly consulted. So,
Yeah. So just to ensure, because this is just a spatial plan, it's not exactly binding on anyone, but it does inform what will be probably changes to the district plan. I think it's important responding to that consultation feedback for greater intensification, also giving the public the opportunity to see what is possible or likely to occur, or nothing's guaranteed because we have to go through the hearing process for the plan change. But I think it's important that we indicate in this spatial plan our preference and preference of a number of the people who submitted on the consultation to provide for a reasonable amount of medium density 1 areas. This is the dark orange area indicated on page 23 of the spatial plan. And I think in response to that consultation, I would like to see, given this is again just a spatial plan, it's not binding in any way, an amendment to the indicative areas in that spatial plan, noting this is not a binding plan, unlike the district plan changes, that will clearly be informed by the spatial plan, and to indicate an extension out to along Croucher towards Darcy Street and towards Salisbury Road. So a block of medium 1 density areas. And the driver for this, as mentioned in some of the consultation, is to provide sufficient mitigation around those medium density 1 areas, i.e. a road, so that neighbours confronting this area are not dramatically or detrimentally affected. And a road is a good mitigation measure between medium 1 density and medium 2 density. And consistent with that, I would have thought that we should be withdrawing from the eastern side of Edward Street because it abuts the western side of the other street on the opposite side of Edward Street. And so bringing that back so that the medium 1 density again is fully surrounded by a road. So in that regard, given it's unclear what the chair is proposing to do, I just wonder whether some wording is added either in motion 2 or 3, probably motion 2, at the end of motion 2, that merely acknowledges at the end there, as amended, brackets, including changes to medium density 1 areas, close bracket, full stop. So is the chair in any way open to that amendment?
So I'm relatively relaxed because this will be worked through. But to me, where the rubber hits the road is actually the plan change.
Exactly.
But I'll let Jeremy reply about these. Okay.
Yeah, thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, I guess, the response to the public feedback we had around intensification. We did get a strong body of feedback supporting intensification, and a number of people said go bigger, do more, and it was actually that resulted in the NDR2 area, which is the lighter pink area, and which is the lower level of intensification, but still potentially quite significant, being extended out quite significantly and much further than the FDS did. So the Future Development Strategy identified a smaller area focused around the town centre. In some ways, I guess that area has almost become the MDR1 with this MDR2 spreading further. So we adopted this sort of 2 levels of intensification. We then took that back out to the public and reached quite a high level of engagement on that. So there was a lot of feedback supporting what we've done. We did some refinements. I guess my advice would be that we've landed that Richmond Spatial Plan. It would involve some rework to now change the that darker orange polygon to extend it out. The justification for that would have to be reworked back into the spatial plan. We'd have to rework the spatial plan in order to justify that change. So I guess my advice would be to leave the spatial plan as it is. It was a point in time that it's doing a job. It's I guess feeding back providing for the statement, providing for the position, that the public gave us, and then moving forward with Plan Change 81, you're entitled to pick up the Richmond Spatial Plan and the maps that are in it, the polygons for intensification that are in it, and move forward. And if you don't think that it's gone far enough, then you're entitled through Plan Change 81 to make those changes. That would be my perspective on it.
Right. So I hear you. I think it's just important that the public have greater transparency over this, and this spatial plan provides that kind of heads up as they go into this, what will be the next round. I think it's really important. I don't see it as a significant change. I think everyone around the table is pretty much in agreement with what has been proposed, at least been put out to the public to consult on. So I think it's fair that the spatial plan should include it. So as I see the words now, I'm happy with those words. The person who moved it, are they happy with those words?
I've already asked them quietly. So my understanding is the mover and the seconder are happy with the amendment. Yeah. My view is it's actually the plan change that will be the most important issue.
Absolutely.
Going forward. I've got a question from another councillor. So the mover and the seconder are relaxed. As long as the staff are relatively relaxed, I don't think it'll make much difference.
Thank you.
Plus, Councillor Walker, you've got a question. What we're having.
Yeah, I guess my question is, are we portraying what we talked about in the workshop? And for me, I thought that was going to be included, albeit that this is a spatial plan, but this starts the hikoi, the journey that we've already gone and got feedback on. So I think it's important to embrace it now than to throw it as a could be later on in the plan change. I support it.
This report was done well before the workshop. Like I said, it got out of sequence. The ideal thing would have been to approve this report 2 weeks ago and then had the workshop. That's the problem. And that's created the confusion.
So today's the opportunity for us to include it though, is it not?
But it's not. Jeremy, a comment? That doesn't cause
No, we're happy with that amendment. We can with that.
Any other questions, people? None? I'll put the motion then. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. The next one is Mr. Rice, Bill, and it's about the government policy statement on transport and our submission, and it's retrospective as I understand it. So, over to you, Bill, and microphones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mark, you got another question. Mark, have you got another question?
No, I just, something has come up. I'm going to have to excuse myself now, so apologies. Good luck for the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, and thanks for your attendance. That's good. Bill?
Great, thank you. So this report is very brief and seeks retrospective approval for the submissions that have been submitted on the government policy statement on land transport. And the reason that it's a retrospective approval is that the consultation on the GPS was 1 month long and didn't allow us time to go through the formal approval process. But we have workshopped with council the draft submissions and have had email correspondence regarding those before we submitted them. So we submitted two submissions. One was a joint submission with Wakatu regarding the maintenance funding for roads held in general collective Maori ownership. And the other was a general submission on the issues. And the general submission was largely supportive of the submission from the Nelson Regional Transport Committee, the Nelson Tasman Regional Transport Committee, Haituara, and the South Island Regional Transport Committee chairs. So I'm happy to take the report as read and take any questions.
Councillor Dowler.
I'm just happy to move. Thanks.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you very much through the chair. Whilst not directly related to whether we approve or not approve the retrospective submission, I'm wondering whether we have what's our latest understanding of when we could expect construction to start on the Hope Bypass?
Through the chair, the State Highway Investment Program was released last Friday, and that gave some indication of where the state, where NZTA were heading with their proposals. And in terms of the Hope Bypass, they are looking at a period of business case development in the next 3 years, some land purchase and consenting in a period after that, and construction starting in about 9 years.
Gosh, that's quite a long way into the future, isn't it?
An understatement. Yeah. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you for that update.
Got a supplementary question. How do we move that forward?
We have our submission to the GPS indicated that the Hope Bypass was a high priority, and whether that is considered or not is another issue. We can, I guess, at a political level, make some commentary to both NZTA and central government.
My understanding, Transport Minister's here in the next 2 weeks.
Through the chair,
Mr. Fletcher, Dwayne.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I mean, Bill has covered off the immediate things we can do, and obviously there's the political pressure the two councils can bear on the government. The council will be the Regional Transport Committee, and the council will be signing off on a regional land transport plan, and I expect that the RTC and the council want to see some commentary on the proposed timing of the Hope Bypass in that plan as well, which is a formal document we give to the Wakatahi.
All right, Councillor, have you got another question? No? Councillor Ellis, you had a question?
No, I was just happy to second, which I'm not sure anyone's done yet. And Dwayne, for goodness sake, go back to bed. We appreciate your commitment, but really, he's just amazing, isn't he? So, yeah, thank you.
Councillor Dowler.
Just a comment yesterday when we were discussing the SHIPS, which is the State Highway Investment Program. Yeah. Emma Spate from NZTA did say that there's 3 groups of work. The actual construction of the bypasses in the 3rd group. There'll be work done in Group 1 and Group 2, but if the work progresses in Group 1 and Group 2 quicker than expected and the funding's available, it could be brought forward. That's what I took out of what she said. So I'd say the biggest issue they'll have will probably be what we all have, land purchase.
Okay. My understanding is there's a designation over the land because it got extended last year, Mr. Kirby, if I remember right. Yeah, there was some stuff further south. All right. So any other comments on the GPS? No. So it's been moved and seconded. I'll put the motion there. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Right. We move to the next thing, and I've got to try and get this right here. So strategy and policy and environmental activity report. So we've got a team up there, David, Alan standing in for Dwayne and Barry. Who wants to start?
Well, we might as well go in the order.
Page 198 on your thing. So Alan, you're starting.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll go in the order in the report, and yeah, David and I will pick this up to relieve Dwayne from having to talk.
Yeah, fair enough. Great dedication. You don't look too good, Dwayne.
Okay, so from the community policy point of view, LGP still is our top priority and dominating our lives. We're obviously well into the consultation now, and thank you for the elected members' support to all our community meetings. So we're most of the way through those. I think we've got one Rotary Richmond Rotary next week. I think that's the last one. We're sort of busy receiving submissions, entering the hard copies into the database, those sorts of things, and then preparing for the analysis and deliberations report, which is gives us a tight period after we finish consultation for us to turn that around. Just thought I'd give you a brief sort of update on where we're at the moment. So at the moment, we've got 269 submissions as of this morning. Just looking through the various choices, the 4 choice areas, certainly in each case, the majority of the submissions are supporting our preferred proposal so far. I would anticipate we will get a rush of submissions at the end. And so I would anticipate the number going up significantly before the end. And we'll also probably get the ones that are longer and have more commentary on them at the end. So yeah, anticipating a bit more work as we go forward. So that's sort of where we are with the LGP. Other things, reserve management plans moving along. It's been a bit of delay in the classification work, but we're progressing with working through the feedback we received from the early engagement and moving towards the sort of thinking about what we need to include in those plans. We've got a couple of recent additions to our work program, being the navigation bylaw and the dangerous dams policy. They've both got kind of statutory deadlines that we need to hit in the short term. So moving those forward as quickly as we can. And then the other bylaws are sort of progressing. So that's probably my quick intro to how we're going. Happy to take questions.
Questions up to about page 203, if I look at that. So any questions of Alan? And I see Councillor Kiramont.
Thank you. And through the chair, page 200, community leasing and policy. So we've put a hold on that, and after the LTP is going to pick it back up again. So what's the time frame for completing that, or is that just out in the future somewhere?
We have got a timeline, but I don't have that to hand. So maybe I could circulate that to councillors after this meeting. So sorry.
Thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Yeah, look, just a comment about publicity for the consultation on site. And it was a long time ago that we discussed how we were going to publicise our community meetings. And I've certainly in Golden Bay, there was nothing in our Golden Bay Weekly, which is the go-to place for advertising. And it just seems a bit hit and miss that it was a long time ago that we decided, do we do any kind of review of our choices about where we advertise in relation to community feedback and the number of people who have attended? And do we review that in any sort of formal or systematic way and say maybe we should do something a bit differently in the next 3 years' time?
Right, through you, Mr. Chair. So, I mean, in short answer, we wanted to do a debrief of the whole LTP process, of which this can be part. So, I definitely think it's worth reflecting on what has worked well and what hasn't worked well in this process, so that we can learn that not just for the next LTP, but potentially if we're doing an annual plan in a year's time, then those sorts of things. So, yes. We did have adverts in Golden Bay Weekly, but they didn't include, for some reason, they didn't include the drop-in session. So it was encouraging people to engage in the process, but without telling them about the drop-in session, which is disappointing. So we obviously dropped the ball in that respect. So, but yeah, we definitely need to do a debrief.
Follow up?
Yeah, thanks for that. So that was actually a mistake. Yeah.
In my opinion, I mean, yeah.
Okay, so we gave them the right information and they didn't put it in, or was it we didn't give them the right?
No, we didn't give them the right information. Yeah, I wouldn't blame it on the newspaper. It's about how we, what we gave them.
Deputy Mayor Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Apologies for lateness. Just page the cat bylaw. I just wonder if we could have a bit more of an update around that, because we're also working with the Regional Pest Management Committee around including it in that, aren't we? So there's two processes running alongside each other, as I understand it. And just wonder if we could have a bit of an update on the bylaw firstly, anyway, obviously from.
Okay, again through you, Mr. Chair. So we did that early engagement and got quite a bit of feedback around that. My understanding from talking to Kat, who's looking after the cat bylaw for my team, is that most of the feedback where people were supportive of what we were doing and probably wanting us to go a bit further than we had probably thought initially. We have a workshop on the 21st of May where we'll come back and talk to you in more detail about the feedback we've got, the options in front of us, and then really kind of to get your direction for us then to sort of draft a bylaw and put that out for public consultation.
So thank you. Will that align along with what the Joint Pest Management Committee is doing around identifying cat excluded areas?
To be honest, I wasn't aware of that, so I'll talk with Kat.
I can comment on this
processes, but
if it helps.
Yeah, Dwayne.
Yeah, the pest management plan has different drivers and has different scope to do things for the bylaw. So the bylaw is primarily focused on environmental impacts to humans, human health, public nuisance. So we don't have the same scope in a cat bylaw to say you can't have cats in this location or anything like that. So you'll see the scope for us to be able to do things when we come back to the 21st is much more limited.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Bakey.
Thank you, through the chair. Page 204, joint speed management plan. Just around the workshopping, I won't read out all the stages that are there backwards and forwards between the various committees, but are we going to workshop as a individual council or collectively with the two councils together?
Yeah, we sort of moved on now to the infrastructure planning part. So maybe that's a good.
Well, that's all right.
It's a good time for David to introduce that, and you can
let David answer that because he's got that up next. David, if you could answer that for us, and I understand you're moving to a new role, and it's a bit of a step up as well. So we need to congratulate David on that.
More of a lateral shift.
Yeah.
I guess
I understand you're going to be the team leader for looking after rivers.
That's correct. Yeah.
So you're stepping from one hot seat into a slightly hotter seat, actually, to be honest. So anyway, well, if you can answer that please.
Good morning, councillors. Through you, Chair. Actually, I think Dwayne might have the answer to this.
Yeah. No, absolutely fine. Apologies. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good, Dwayne.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we are going to workshop it with the Regional Transport Committee in the first instance, and we were intending to sound out what their recommendations were with the individually with the two councils before we took it up to the joint, before we took their recommendations up to the joint council committee, which I think is the body that'll approve it. That was the intention. Yeah, ultimately the joint councils approve it, and so we thought it was a prudent move to make sure that we sound out what they're recommending before it gets up there. It was a process that's very similar to the future development strategy process that ran a couple of years ago, where effectively what was in a subcommittee heard, deliberated, and made recommendations, and then checked it with the two councils before it took it up.
Okay, so we've got questions up to page 208 of David. So it's more about infrastructure. So it covers coastal, wastewater management, water and wastewater. So Councillor Dowler was first off the list. No, I saw you first, and then we'll get to the deputy. This was late.
I just have a wee smile to myself, like I'm reading about the Mapua master plan and blah blah blah, and I know there's things come out from Motueka, and I read that report earlier on in the first bit, and the part commentary there was that nothing should be built on any land that was within 5 meters of the high tide. Is that going to be affected on all the rest of the stuff that's going on, or is that going to be altered, or what's going to happen?
That's about when you're doing changing zones and new stuff. So all the stuff that's historical, we've already got houses everywhere below that, and this is being prudent and going forward. But my understanding is a change of zones in the future, and maybe Barry will comment on that. So it doesn't affect existing zoned land.
Yeah, that was I guess a conservative approach that was taken through the future development strategy for any future development, that we would stay away from anything below 5 meters above sea level for any future development. And we have got land that's much lower than that. And in those areas, we're seeing that come through, and you've heard about the need to require to allow for up to 1.65 meters of sea level rise in those areas which are below that at the moment. So there's a difference between new development and new zoning and stuff that's already zoned. I mean, ideally, where it's really low, we wouldn't want to put any more people in harm's way. And that's part of that discussion we'll be having around the hazards plan changes, is what do we do in those areas where it is low lying and we don't really want to put more people in harm's way. But there's a difference between existing zoned land and developing new land.
So it won't affect the Motueka West?
No.
Okay. So, yeah, no, I'll talk about it offline.
Deputy Mayor Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question around the waste management and minimisation on page 208. Just a reason around why the timeline's been changed, and hopefully no one's looking to change the membership of this, as happened once previously.
Don't think we'd ever allow that again. Of course, there's a lot of heartache.
Through Chair, I'm sorry, I'm not sure exactly by membership on the sort of the working group.
Yeah, it's a historical, I see. It didn't work well. But no, I'm more interested in the timeline. Yeah.
The timeline has, I think, previously was maybe a bit ambitious to get it done early. This is more aligning with what our statutory timelines to complete the minimization plan is, because the waste assessment, which we needed to do before we do the main minimization plan, took a touch longer to do than we expected. That's the reason of the shift. No new parties involved. It's just getting that working group up to speed on the minimization plan. I think they have met at least once so far. With that scope.
Just in relation to that waste assessment you're talking about, is that'll be being done at the landfills transfer station, and we've got an external party doing that, or is that being?
That's right. So that's done now. It was Morrison Lowe who we had contracted to do that waste assessment, and it's been finished. I'm not sure if there's any sort of last little adoption steps that need to happen there. But that was a necessary step before we can proceed to this waste minimization plan.
Yeah, it is, and it should be able to do that with some haste now. One would think now you've got the assessment. Yeah, thank you. I'm talking haste in council terms, not farmers terms.
Councillor Mara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I haven't been clever enough to find the address, but for the speed reduction work and the workshops that are taking place, can I just remind our two members about Whakarura Street west of the Void House? That's been a request from Eddie Void for a number of years, from 50 to 30. So it's a really narrow stretch, and I know I've said some history into Barry, but can you just please make sure it hasn't dropped off again? Because I think Jenna was raising it when she was here and then got caught in conflict. But I hate to see it missed off.
Wayne, have you got a comment on that?
Just a global one. The options we took out were, classified streets and tried to have a consistent way of aligning the kind of road it is with the intended long-term speed limit. Depending on the approach that the Regional Transport Committee takes, it may go, for example, to the minimum, the do minimum, which is around schools. If that happens, I fully expect there'll be a list of exceptions outside of that kind of consistent approach for just the schools, where there's like a reasonably compelling case on an isolated basis for changes. So as long as they've put a submission in on that, then we have a record of that to potentially raise with the committee and ultimately with the council.
Thanks, mate. I'm just raising whether it was a submission now. It's certainly been a submission over the years, and it's west of Douglas Road. And essentially it's a one-way street if there's anything else on that road. And there's a whole lot of orchard vehicles and that going down there, which is just incredibly a short piece of road.
Sure.
So hopefully it's there somewhere.
Yeah, may I ask, Councillor, if you could just flick Bill and myself just a wee email so it doesn't get lost in the 2,300 submissions.
Yep, right. So that's done. So no other questions of, Councillor Caroline? And Councillor Dowler wants to have a second go.
Page 208, Motueka wastewater treatment plant relocation. You're going to restart the working group. Are you going to review the terms of reference and the makeup of the group?
Through your chair, yes. I believe the terms of reference might have even been attached to that workshop we had a few weeks back. I'm not sure the meeting probably went a bit long, so I'm not sure we really had time to kind of go over them in any detail. But and the key word is restart, right? Because the working group was paused a couple of years ago to allow us to do the regional philosophy. So it's really just getting the paddles out and shocking the heart a little bit to get it going again.
Thank you. Councillor Dowler?
Yeah, just to Dwayne, Jamie has been supposedly compiling a list of speed limit reductions over about the last 4 years, I understand, and he was going to try and include a lot of them in the upcoming. So can you have a chat to Jamie? I put in some Chamberlain Street and a couple other places as well. So I don't know whether people have submitted. I haven't quite got to the end of them all yet. But yeah, I'll be really gutted if they haven't come through from Jamie.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll follow up definitely.
Councillor Walker?
Yeah, so furthermore on that, thank you for your chair. I don't know if the people who submitted previously in the old system that we had knew that they had to put a new submission in for this round. My understanding is Councillor Dowler said that we'd collated a list over a period of time, and that list was going to be used for data for moving forward. So can we please have some acknowledgement whether those people needed to do a new submission, and where does that leave that group of people if that's the case? Can someone come back to me, please?
I can address that now if that's okay. We have a list of all the speed management reduction requests that have come through. I think since the last bylaw change, I don't know, it might have been 4 years ago, as Councillor Dowler suggested. And we can. I mentioned before that the approach for the speed management plan took a different tack. It took a road classification approach and looked at a set of consistent speeds for different types of roads and different types of environments. what I think might happen is that the RTC will consider at least a couple of those options that bring that consistent approach down to a smaller number of speeds. That's one approach, and if it does, that list that I talked to will become more important, because then we'll be working through the end of, I mentioned the exceptions to the consistent approach, and we can work through that list through that mechanism, in addition to the ones that have been raised through submissions.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you very much through the chair. I think you've covered this, but I'm not clear in my mind. So, I mean, the speed process is something that's constantly raised by our local communities. And so I feel that I want to be really across what it is that we're proposing to change. So can you just confirm for me, will we as a Tasman council have, you know, a workshop going through the detail of what we might be proposing for changes in the Tasman district?
Dwayne?
The council has delegated responsibility for development and consultation and recommending to the joint council the speed management plan. So I just want to state that at the outset, because you have asked them to, you tasked them with that responsibility. In the first instance, and in fact, I think it's in the timeline in the report, we will be workshopping that with them and taking their feedback to the joint councils in a workshop. Sorry, I said individually before, I actually just checked the timeline. I think it's a joint council workshop, and discussing it with the two councils at the same time in a workshop environment, not a decision-making environment. I suppose I'll acknowledge now that does limit to some extent the extent to which we can get down into details. For example, for individual streets, it's probably going to be a workshop more focused on the approach the RTC is recommending, and there will be, I have very little doubt there'll be some exceptions to the general rule they're taking, the general approach. I guess if the council is concerned and would like to have a separate workshop, particularly for individual streets, then that's something that would be useful to know now. We can start programming it.
We might ask the chair of the regional transport to make a comment, seeing as he's in the room.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Brock.
And John, I might just get you to check that I'm correct with this, but I understand the delegations to the Joint Transport Committee rather than the Joint Councils.
We can have that checked.
And just to respond to what Drain's saying, and Christine, I still think it's important, because we're yet to consider how we're going to treat the submissions or how we're going to handle that, whether it's under the current legislation or the proposed new that's all yet to be decided. And I was thinking at this stage it'll be a blend of the two, where we can do both. But that's only my personal view. And I think it would be beneficial if we had a separate workshop for all our councillors, or invited them to an RTC workshop. Probably a separate one for our councillors would be better on reflection.
Yep, so we can diary that in. I think in answer to your question, it was joint committee, I think, Elaine, we were saying, wasn't it?
Yes, so the joint RTC makes a recommendation to joint committee.
Right. Yeah. So firstly, it comes to the joint RTC. Yeah, they make the ultimate decision. So in between that, we perhaps need a workshop with our council, or post, or prior or post. And I think that's something we can perhaps.
I would have thought prior.
Yeah, I'm thinking perhaps prior. Perhaps as the chair of the operations, the three of us can have a discussion with John about that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I can see that both Dwayne and John are hearing this message that councillors would like to workshop this. Just add to your workload. It's all right. It just makes sense, because it's probably one of the most contentious things we have in our community. Councillor Dakey?
Yeah, I'd support that. Just for a date, there's a possible Richmond on the Rise workshop on the 15th of May. We may not need that date. That could be a possible date for workshopping it, if that date's now available.
Right, any other questions in relation to the transport issues, or otherwise we'll move forward to Barry from after page 208. So it starts 209.
Chair, councillors, we have had a number of workshops on this material over the past few weeks, so I'll take the report as read and happy to take questions on anything that you have.
Well, I think I listed some of the plan changes and work that we've got going ahead, and it seemed quite a long list. So we're going to, once we get through the long-term plan, we're going to be busy, and Barry's team is busy now. Deputy Mayor Brian.
You'll rip me down here. Doesn't anyone else want to ask a question? Just a couple of I made, Mr. Chairman. So firstly, Barry, in relation to the freshwater farm plans and our team, and now looks like from what you're saying here that it's going to be pushed out further. Our team of ladies are preparing for all of this work, and obviously they're dedicated to that. But are we looking to use them in other areas potentially while they wait effectively for steer from the legislation and being able to get started?
I don't think there's a lot of capacity in Merca's team to do that. There's a huge amount of work. Originally, the farm plan regulations were supposed to kick in August, I think, this year for Tasman. The government's still signalling that farm plans will be a bit of a cornerstone to freshwater management. And we're hoping that is the case as well. So there's a lot of preparatory work, working with farmer groups and working with communities to get that up to speed and get everything in place. So there's not a lot of slack in the system.
Even with that delay further from 1st of January 25 for potentially another year?
I'd probably leave that to defer to Merca in terms of details on that. Sorry. Yeah.
So that was my first one. And certainly they've done a lot of experience, and we've been a guinea pig, some of you may know, for that process, and they're doing it really well. So it'd be a shame to lose that capability. Yeah. In fact, my daughter said they were very positively engaging. Very, I'll think of the word in a minute she used.
You got another question?
I do, around outstanding natural landscapes and features, Mr. Chairman. So Barry, just in relation to this plan change you're talking about, just want to clarify, is that across the whole district? Because I'm trying to remember the catalyst, you've alluded to it, that we had to do this as part of an Environment Court direction. I thought that was in relation to something in the Able Tasman Golden Bay area. Does that mean that we're going to have to do outstanding features and natural across the whole district, or just in that area?
We have to do it across the whole district. There's been Environment Court decisions that are basically set to councils that you have to do it across your district. You can't take a cookie cutter effect. You have to look at your district as a whole and then decide within your whole district what areas are outstanding. So we don't have the ability anymore to do, say, Golden Bay, for example, by itself. We have to do just the whole district.
So that's going to be quite a process across the district and contentious. How are we going to engage with landowners initially? Because they'll be...
You missed the workshop, Deputy Mayor. We discussed it.
Yeah,
we did. I'll talk to you offline.
But there still will be a challenge, whether we had a workshop or not. There'll still be a challenge engaging with particularly some of those Marawea farmers, I can tell you.
Oh, I'll go with you, because I think we might need some armour plating. But 90% of it is actually, 90% of the land, I think, at the workshop is either public land, conservation land, or in a national park.
Yes, the other 10% will be the challenge.
It will, but this isn't SNAs, and that's what we have to do.
But people will still...
I know that, but we've actually, I was with you when we did some of this engagement in Murchison and in Sonana.
Yeah.
And so we've done a lot of the work.
Yeah. Just will need to be well prepared for engagement.
Right. Other questions of Barry? You can see there is a big load of work. If not, would someone like to move that the report be received? Councillor Butler, seconded Councillor Mara. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. We'll now move to the greenhouse gas emissions inventory, page 214. Anna Garrity. Good morning, Anna.
Morning, councillors. So I will take this report as read, but just quickly note that we actually went through quite a big review on this report. This is our third annual inventory in our greenhouse gases, and for the first two, we used the equity share approach as recommended to us. But it turns out that most councils around the country are still using the operational control method, which is better suited for councils, and so we switched the methodology. Therefore, the numbers look different, but everything within the report for this year, when compared to those previous 2 years, those previous 2 years ones have been recalculated in here. So yeah, and the two main highlights, I guess, are that we moved from landfill emissions calculations from the MFE factor, which is kind of a generic one that doesn't take into account unique considerations. Last year, Nelson City got a unique emissions factor gazetted for the landfill, and so that methodology was applied, and also Nelson City Council used it too. That means we can compare our emissions. We share half of the landfill emissions with them. And another thing that happened was we finally got our emissions data from PF Olsen, who are one of our suppliers, and their diesel use for the immense amount of harvesting that happened. And that financial year meant that transport supplier fuels were look like they've jumped up higher, but in reality in the past 2 years they would have been similar. It's just those figures weren't included on those years. So they're the two things I wanted to bring to your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thanks.
I thought it was a good news report, and it actually reflects what they've been doing at the landfill for a long time, but they've actually improved it and spent some money. So I saw it as a good news report. Councillor Kittermott.
Yeah, this is brilliant news. Can we run the flag up the flagpole and put the news line and tell all people, that our greenhouse gases are coming down? Because, anything bright and like this, we need to publicise, please.
Yeah, we can talk with the comms team about doing a newsline article. That would be fine.
Right. Deputy Mayor Bryant.
As you say, Anna, it's a change that made the good news story about the landfill emissions reductions. Also continuing on that theme is as the landfill committee moves to supplying the hospital with more gas so that they can stop using coal, that will be a real gain as well. Will that, I suppose that coal will be burnt in Nelson City, so it won't have any impact on ours, will it?
No, my understanding is that because all the emissions from the regional landfill, which happens to be located in Nelson, we just share 50% of the emissions, no matter where the gas is going. So yeah, it will impact on us. And
okay, well that's good. Yeah,
further good news.
That is the plan that we supplied enough gas that they can ultimately do away with coal or use it for an extreme backup if gas becomes unavailable or electricity. So it's got to be positive all round. And of course, we're also looking at some options for Eves Valley as well, rather than just flaring that here, but they may take a little longer.
Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I'd go further and say this is a very, very good news report. I mean, I'm interested in whether this is a surprise or we understood this is the result we were going to end up with.
Through the chair, yeah, I guess one thing we had been unhappy about in the previous two reports was that using the MFE emissions factor didn't account or show those improvements we knew were happening at the landfill, and so that was a reason why we switched to using that new unique emissions factor.
Thank you. And given that we're well below target, our target's going out to, I haven't got it right in front of me, 2035 and 50, is it? So we just keep going to just get them lower and lower. Like, what's the direction or impetus that we have as a council around? So a bit like Lydia Coe when she started golf professionally, wasn't it? She just overshot all her goals. So we overshot our goals here. And what do we do now in terms of a policy approach or an intention approach?
So one of the documents being reviewed at the moment is the draft Tasman Climate Response Strategy and Action Plan that's out for submissions at the moment as part, it's a concurrent consultation with the L2P, and that's where the emissions targets are shown. So if we receive submissions to that effect, that's something you can consider when you are doing the deliberations.
Would we as council not set something to say, well, actually, we, you know, just a question about that, and as a governance group, how we reset, I suppose. And also just another couple of questions. What leverage do we have or use in terms of our transport suppliers and their emissions? Or what do we hope to better do if we can't now?
Through this year, so I'll just answer the second part because I think John wants to speak to the first part. But at the moment, they are voluntarily providing us with their information about their emissions. It's not actually written into any contract, so they have to do that. So far, we've concentrated our 16 suppliers that we spend the most money on, and 12 of the 16 have now replied to our annual request for their information. I guess the fact that they are doing this voluntarily is good, and I think just generally, you know, that's the way businesses are going, are thinking about their emissions and the impact they're having. So yeah, there's no current legal kind of requirement to make them do anything, but they are voluntarily providing information, which is a good start.
Thank you. And we'd be very attuned, I imagine, in terms of our contracts and anything that can be integrated into contracts with particularly those areas where, you know, that are contributing relatively higher emissions, and that gets factored into us, and just how, I suppose I'm just thinking about how we choose and how we encourage around who we're contracting and what their policies and plans and intentions are around their emissions. So just more a comment around that, I suppose. And I think I heard that the report's going to be made available, and if we can have some very clear comms about that, here's the link, that goes out separately and it's just not sitting available on the website, but that we really let people know about that. A great report, and I imagine that's a tremendous amount of work, and just a very, very good result. Thank you.
John, you wanted to make a comment, and Richard both. So John first.
Mine was more, I think, Councillor, you were looking at your colleagues there around setting direction for this. We'd be really keen, either by workshop or whether you come back to us and we have a discussion around, if we're going to review those targets, what do they look like? We'd push that to you to provide direction. We'll provide the detail and the monitoring behind it, but it'd be really good if you could provide governance direction as to either today or a later date as to whether or not you want to review those targets.
Thank you.
Richard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just probably want to caution the committee about getting too excited, particularly about the landfill, because as Anna stated, it's the way we've measured it. We've done nothing different to actually bring those factors down. It's how we've measured it. So it looks like that there's a massive 90% saving, but it's the way it's measured. The landfill has been operating for taking that gas out and sending it to the hospital for over 10 years now. So I just want to caution the committee about getting too excited about these figures.
But the problem was we never got credit for it. And that was an issue that when I sat on that landfill committee used to be very frustrating, that we were doing the right thing and it didn't count, and it needed to. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Anna. Through you. Thanks for your report. I just wanted to clarify something, because there's a piece in there that looks like, you know, they're talking about our suppliers fuels, and you mentioned P. Folsom. So does this include the time period where I'm just wanting to tease out the idea that they might be high in emissions, but wasn't that for the processing of the way that we're doing our forestry so that we have less slash? Has that contributed to that high level of contract costs?
Yeah, it's more just the amount of diesel they used driving around doing all their harvesting and taking the logs away and things like that. So, and what I was trying to say before was that their amount of use of supplier fuels would have been the same in the previous 2 years. Also, it's just we didn't receive that information, so we don't know for sure how much there was.
Okay, any other questions of Anna? No. Councillor Ellis, are you happy to move the report? Seconded. Councillor Bryant, Deputy Mayor Bryant. So we'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. That brings us to the close of the meeting. I'd like to invite Councillor Hill, if she's able to close with karakia, please.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Chair. Karagi tātou, tāwhiri manga hua o te taiao, mai a papa tōnu ki tākoutou nei. Kia rangi nui e tū iho nei, tūturi whakamau ki a Tina hui e tae ki e.
Well, thank you all for your attendance. Our workshop can't be moved forward, so you've got an extended cup of tea. You can even go and get a fancy coffee. So we start at 11:30, and that was 1 hour and 6 minutes. So I think that's nearly a record for us. So that's not too bad. All right, so 11:30 in here.